So now you finally figured out, I finally figured out why I didn't have an answer for you guys around the beginning of the J world around transplants. Because that was yet to be determined, because we still hadn't established the power of food. We had to get over the hump that food was poison and that people thought that the food supply was deficient in nutrition. And we also had to determine what foods were going to regrow limbs and organs and arms and legs, even if you're born without them. Well, how could you regrow something if you're born without them? Well, because there's a specific blueprint to the body, okay? And just because it was born without arms and legs and organs doesn't mean that it wasn't supposed to have it. Of course it was, but there was anomalies to the genetic line at the time of conception, and even probably in time of utero, and who knows what was passed down. And so when you have humans who are supposed to have 2 eyes, a nose, 2 arms, all the things that we have, and somebody goes in and intercepts Mother Nature and maybe causes a deficiency, causes a breakage, causes an extra chromosome to be grown or minus a chromosome, even anomalies to the chromosome, and aggressive uracil evolution to it, then manifesting in extra pairs of something, then that was what was done at the time. And then if you had pain and a little bit of suffering and you were exposed to a bunch of people who have all these, the same kind of genes, but not as broken, I guess, then you'd have to deal with the pain and suffering, and you'd have to eat all food. And well, I've never seen it happen, of course, because it takes a long time to regrow anything. It takes a long time to change. It took me 7 years to change. It took me 7 years to get to this point. So for someone to actually regrow an arm and a limb and an organ, even if they're born without them, I would imagine it would take a long time and a lot of pain and suffering and a lot of food. Which is why I say those who are alive, who have been diagnosed with conditions, if you can handle the pain and suffering, eat all the food in the food supply, and release the demons in the proper way, you could come back from potential death, but it would be a suffering like no other. But is it worth it to suffer to live, or is it worth it to suffer to die? And that's the thing about conditioning people to suffer to die versus suffering to live. And then people progressively, systematically take food away from themselves and they treat themselves to death. So yeah, we're on the edge of hell. We're in limbo. And when you're in limbo, oh, it sucks. That's what the whole conspiracy world the last 20 years has been like. It's been like I've been in hell, a limbo. And with the aggressive climate change and the aggressive particle acceleration, those in the conspiracy world who've been doing this for 10, 12, 14, 15, 20 years, now the indicators are so heightened, the senses are so heightened, and finally everyone's becoming to be on the same page. Like I said, if nothing happens April 8th, then we can enjoy limbo and hell a little bit longer. And if something happens on April 8th, we'll all be on the same page. And that may not be a good thing. That's why I said, unfortunately, we'll all be on the same page, because the joy of our world is to have a million storylines, right? That was the joy of living in this diverse society that didn't have aggressive microbes and climate change and all this conspiracy stuff, is that, oh, you can believe in this religion, you can believe in this religion, you can believe in this belief system and that belief system, you can deny, you can argue, you can debate. And that was the joy, that was expanding the capacity. But once all of us are on the same page, then everything that we have talked about in the conspiracy world will actually be self-evident. And those that are in dispute, well, they'll die suddenly, or they'll get diagnosed to such an extent that they'll have to get treated for it because they couldn't handle the pain. And then everyone, no matter which storyline you came from, okay, would it be like, okay, yeah, I get it. Either their religion is telling them to go off to the rapture, or the J world's like, yeah, well, that's what happens when you treat disease and you have so many opposing forces within and you starve yourself. And then other religions are like, oh yeah, you're ascending to the next universe or whatever. Or Nibiru is going to come and take us back to the homeland or something. Okay, so then everyone's storylines will finally all be aligned, and they'll end up either alive and suffering, but still alive, watching everyone around them going like, holy shit, or they'll be off to the hinterlands of the universe, the edge of the universe, and maybe even just haunting one place because there was unresolved issues. And that's where you can go watch Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagan, and he talks to ghosts and stuff. Okay, so yeah, I had to tie up a loose end around the whole foreign objects because I remember, because when I posted that that post that was erased from anonymous contributor in the Died Suddenly group, and they were saying that they noticed a lot of people who had hip replacements and stuff go through fast rejections after they may have been therapized by public therapy. And I'm not saying correlation equals causation. I think everything's a factor. But then I remember, oh, that's right, immune system activation. I've been talking about immune system activation. And when you have immune system activation, when you have opposing forces within, when you have foreign objects within, when you have any kind of deficiencies or injuries or any kind of things are going on in the body, the immune system activates and pulls resources to go and try to push through, repair, all the things that you would do in your house. But if you don't have any money in the bank and you're trying to fix things, you can't do it. You'll try to pull, rob Peter to pay Paul. And then that causes breakage. It causes deficiencies. Was it rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? I mean, if you're not bringing in resources and releasing the ones that are working against you and sustaining and resting and all that stuff, then it's just, it'll be a died suddenly situation. So, yeah. So foreign objects. Back in the J world, I couldn't tell you if you could sustain them. And now I realized the body would probably reject it over time, but you'd had to eat a lot. But I couldn't say that to people back then, like I said before, because we didn't resolve our issue around the food supply. We didn't see the importance around meat and milk and cheese and gluten and sugar and salt and fats, because everyone was in the Tower of Babel. They were saying that fat was poison. They were saying that gluten was poison. They were saying that milk was poison, meat was poison, eggs are poison. And you had 1 billion people or thousands and thousands of people who said all different types of food was poison. You get the Tower of Babel, then you're like, well, what is the right kind of food to eat? But you needed all the food supply, and then the body would determine through the calcium, through the milk, insects that we're going to find out. Insects have a lot of calcium. We're going to find out that you needed all the food supply to not only reinforce your bone structure so you didn't sustain osteoporosis, but you needed fat for your immune system. You needed amino acids, animal proteins to convert into reinforcing your vital organs. But I didn't have that information or even the verbiage at the time, so I couldn't tell you. So I had to leave that one as a question mark, to be determined. But now when I hear about people's transplants and they're being purged in an inactivated environment, and I knew that salt was immune system activation because people were feeling stuff, and this environment is immune system activation. 9/11 was immune system activation. Any kind of aggressive energy, Wi-Fi, cell towers, even radiation, nuclear radiation, it's immune system activation. Sometimes it could be so much that a person falls apart. Too little, the person's stagnant, and then they don't have enough resistance to deal with change, and so they fall apart, weak. And so there had to be the right kind of balance, and you had to eat all the food, and you had to deal with the pain and suffering. But I knew in my gut on Dr. Phil that people could live beyond 300 years. So as long as the environment can hold life, I knew that you can regrow limbs and organs. I just didn't have all the information. But just even pointing out something as simple as skin is able to regrow. So if my skin here is able to regrow here, why would it discriminate and say, oh, I'm not going to regrow an organ, only just a little skin? Why would something so major, so vital like a heart be discriminated against as far as regrowing? But a cut on your finger or on your skin would be, the thing to regrow. Well, because that's less painful, right? Regrowing things inside your body that were carved out or suffered an anomaly during conception and even in utero, having to repair that damage. I'm saying like this because people don't think of people who have those kind of issues, deficiencies, or whatever as damaged. But scientifically, yeah, all humans are supposed to have 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes and all that stuff. And when they're missing an arm, they're missing a leg, they're missing an eye, they're missing ears, they're missing things. And that's the predominant blueprint. Then to assimilate, relative assimilation to the general population with a blueprint, very specific blueprint, would be a painful venture. And that's what the system trained us, was not to deal with pain and suffering. They did not condition us to deal with pain of evolution and change, but change to what? To deteriorate or to progressively evolve and sustain a better prototype that would have been better than before. And so what they have done is conditioned us to die and reproduce, but not ourselves die and reproduce with babies, which is why they were all about the family for such a long time. And then the opposing balancing force is like, oh, we already have too many children. Oh, we already have too many girls that are destroying themselves with families and under the thumb of the mothers and the father, the in-laws and the family and the husband and whoever else. And so you had to play both sides to see that we could still play human experimentation with different families and watch them go through that culture and nature and nurture, and then also try to control population through the other side. Well, let's do self-gratification, and let's do only, different types of sexual orientations, but it didn't elicit a child at the end of that situation, so the system had to play all these different roles, and I can only imagine how confusing that is to people. But what did I say? We are living on the edge of hell called limbo, and I had one last loose end to wrap up. And so then you know why on my Dr. Phil show episode I said people could live to be 300 or more and regrow limbs and organs and arms even if you're born without them. You needed all the food supply, and you had to stop treating your disease, and you had to release the demons in the proper way. But right now at the 11th hour, as this environment is heating up so aggressively, like seriously so aggressively, people are not getting ahead of that situation. And so when you're down to nothing in hospice, been treating your disease for years and years and years so aggressively, and can't eat food because it's causing pain and suffering and inflammation and all of that, it would be like if you fast forwarded what I've been doing for the last 7 years, like everything that I've been doing, pulling out the crap, eating all the food, sleeping, going through the pain and suffering, you seriously have to have an infrastructure and people around you to support that. You'd have to have enough food, rest. You'd have to have a lot of different resources available, and you'd have to be strong enough. And can you imagine someone who hasn't been conditioned to do what I've been doing, trying to do that, pulling themselves basically out of the grave? It's not going to happen. See, if you're relatively strong and relatively independent, and you can still think coherently and maybe even take on new information, you can balance out that process plus trying to make your bills, plus trying to meet certain needs, but you know that you can't always plan for disease and being down. You can't always plan for feeling good all the time. And so that's going to be something interesting to work with. And so I knew that the foreign objects, the implants, the transplants, when you have to suppress your immune system, that was alarm bells way back in 2016 when someone over at this temporary job told me that their daughter had like a liver transplant or a kidney transplant and was taking immune suppressing drugs. And I'm like, what? Why would you suppress your immune system? You're supposed to have an immune system. But again, I didn't have all the verbiage. And that's what I was saying, like, well, foreign objects, the body will purge that. When? I don't know. At what point? I don't know. And then what that means by the body will purge objects will be like spontaneous. All of a sudden, one day you drink jelly juice and your long implant will all of a sudden just come out of your body. And I'm not saying no. Your body won't destroy itself while it's healing itself, but you'd have to support. See, that's where I was missing. As long as you're supporting your body during that process of that balancing of purging out the foreign objects and rebuilding at the same time, that's what's going on right now, is that the system is purging out the foreign objects, whatever they are, as well as on the back end, rebuilding. And so you have to have those two work simultaneously all the time, because you can't just go all out annihilation. Everyone's gone. And who's left to rebuild? There's no one left to rebuild, so you can't have that. So you have to figure out how to balance out the purge process in the proper way and rebuild. What do you use to rebuild with? Food, not medicine, not herbs, not starvation. You had to eat all food to rebuild on the back end. So the front end, you're purging out the demons, the front of the house. And the back of the house, you're steadily putting in, new lamination, new structure, new patio, new this, new that. And so that way you would still have the house, but you didn't completely demolish it. You just progressively released the demons as you kept rebuilding. And so that's what the whole J world is. But we had to understand the power of food. And that's what the system is doing. It's not going to be all out annihilation, but they have carefully crafted the oncology to affect certain types of people who are already at the brink, who are already intolerant, who are already practicing things that eventually are going to lead them down into the morgue, who are already laughing in the face of authority, who won't stay home and stay safe, who will keep dieting, keep taking all their remedies and surgeries and doing whatever until they can't anymore. And those are like in the J world who sees the writing on the wall. Okay, we're like, oh shit, as the particles accelerate even more, and then the shoulders hurt and the arms hurt, and then you have to go poo, and you have to pull it out sometimes, and you have to eat, and you have to make sure to understand the power of the meat and the milk and the cheese. And while we're purging out the demons and having rashes different places, like I had hives this morning right up here, and my arms were sore this morning. And I took 2 showers yesterday because after I went to the grocery store with my husband, I was doing a little tiny music video. I took a shower because I was sweating. And I took a shower this morning because I had more demons to release. And I slept okay, but I catch myself snoring. I like falling asleep at night, but I wake up when I have to release demons. Okay, but the other day, like on Saturday night, I was so dead to the world sleeping that my husband took a shower and he was coming out of the bedroom and I didn't even hear him. I was dead to the world. I said, honey, I don't remember you taking a shower. And I noticed things were a little bit different, in the bathroom. And I'm like, I don't remember him taking, because usually when he comes upstairs, even at like 12 or 1, I'll wake up and be like, hey dude, what are you doing? I was dead to the world. Okay, so your body will catch up on sleep if it loses sleep the night before, but then you have to give it time to do that. So anyways, yeah. So the whole thing with building back better is the foreign objects have to be released, whatever they are. And if you keep foreign objects in the body and you're under immune suppressing drugs, those antibodies do build up. Those antibodies build up from having those foreign objects in your body, whether they're microbes from colony-forming units of diverse, environment that your body should be able to assimilate to, but also release the demons, but also the implants, the transplants. Yeah, it can't assimilate to such an extent where you have something that's completely foreign. Even though it's the same blood type, it's still DNA that's foreign to you. And there'll be antibodies that build up against it. And then the body's got to release demons, and if a person is afraid because they don't want to feel the pain and suffering of release, they're holding opposing forces within. that the body will eventually get so tired of holding on to those demons that one day it'll try to purge it out, or those antibodies that are built up against those foreign objects turn into a fast-moving something, and then anyone's guess what's going to happen, right? So foreign objects. Remember what I said a long time ago about foreign objects? The J juice could potentially work on purging out foreign objects, but yeah, that's immune system activation. The salt was activating the immune system, activating it to work the way it was actually supposed to. You're not supposed to be holding on to foreign objects in the body, or even too many opposing forces. Your immune system is not supposed to be suppressed. Your immune system is supposed to be activated, especially when it's around foreign objects, externally and internally. Okay? And people reject immune system activation. Inactivated immune systems might hold on to foreign objects and even opposing forces until the climate changes aggressively. And then antibodies get produced against that foreign object progressively over time. And then eventually you get around enough energy force, it will activate the immune system even more aggressively. And then the monster is on the move and your body's reacting to the moving monsters, and it becomes a war. So imagine you have somebody in your house that's working against you all the time, and you just take it and you just take it and you just take it. And then one day you have such built up resentment of having that person in your house working against you all the time, undermining you, that you finally get the impetus to yell so loud that it knocks them back out of the house and they get purged out of the house. But will that then turn into a war where everyone destroys each other? That's what happens when people have so much pressure built up because they didn't release the demons. And when you have so much pressure of opposing forces, of holding on to people that are working against you all the time, and being around things that are working against you all the time, eventually that pressure builds up. It builds up, it builds up, and then one day, supernova, and the person doesn't exist anymore. Those are ticking time bombs. And so that's why I said those who have transplants, I couldn't promise you if your body would try to reject it. And you'd have to eat large amounts of food to regrow the organs that transplant was used for. Which was why I had no answer for people who had transplants on the J juice. It was too early in the research. And so when you are a Franken person with so many implants and transplants, you couldn't afford immune system activation, which is why it's so important to understand the power of food, not be patched together by biotech, because that would mean you would only be a temporary person. Okay? And so that's why you're seeing a lot of people come down with fast-moving cancers, why people who have transplants are finding that their body is rejecting it, or implants, hip implants. And that when I saw that post in that group, I was like, oh my God, that's right. Immune system activation, body rejecting. Yeah, we're living on the edge of hell. It's called limbo. That's why I'm like April 8th, it's like a foreboding feeling, but also it might even be a relief. It's like when people are in hospice and they've been hanging on for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months. They've been getting treated. And then finally it comes to a point where they're in hospice and it's the last like 24 hours, 48 hours of their death. And everyone's just dealing with the suffering of that person and they can't do anything about it. And then when that person passes away, it sucks, but it's also a relief. Finally, you can relax. That's kind of what I think April 8th is going to be like. It's going to be one of those where it's going to suck, but also finally the conspiracy community and those who know what's going on, they can finally relax and be like, see, I told you so. And then just cry. Because they've worked for the last 20-something years trying to warn their friends what's going on. Not that their friends could do anything, but when you know something's going to happen and you can't stop it and you can't tell people to change the way they do things, even if you have a solution, that doesn't mean it's appropriate for the other people. But people keep saying that you're stupid, they keep denying you, they won't change, and that's the thing you have to understand is people won't change unless they want to. And then finally, when it comes down to the death, the actual death, For those who survive that situation, it's a relief, but also it is a suffering like no other. And you have to be able to surviving the death of the old world, the death of your friends and family, even the death of parts of you, the death of the front end while the back end is trying to build itself up. And I couldn't tell you if people could do that. But I think today I've been able to explain why I didn't have an answer with foreign objects. Because you'd have to understand the power of food. You couldn't be those that are gluten-free, meat-free, vegan, vegetarian. You couldn't be one of those. You couldn't be one of those who are so worried about how hot and sexual you look to everyone on Facebook. You couldn't be one of those who are addicted to treating disease. You couldn't be one of those. And how do you get that across, right? And so, yeah, we are living on the edge of hell called limbo. And so will April 8th be the reprieve, the final energy push? The conspiracy community was the hell of limbo. I guess we'll find out. And you can Google what that is in Catholic theology. It's the edge or boundary of hell. And that's right now what Earth is. We are on the boundary of hell because we know something's going on. The revelations, all this conspiracy community, the energy healing people, even the mainstreamers know something is going to happen. They just don't know when, what, or how it's going to manifest. And so I figured out that 9/11 was basically an immune system activation. Okay? And was the kickoff to a lot of the conspiracy community. And then finding out there's other storylines that need to be considered if you want to see what's going to happen in the future through other means. All right? And so I've been saying before that food mitigation diets equals oncology. And that's, for the most part, why people die. It's starvation, yes. But also it is a type of immune system suppression. When you're staying away from cabbage and staying away from salt and sugar and gluten and meat, milk, cheese, and eggs, and those would activate your immune system to finally work for you. People don't want to feel pain and suffering. They don't want to release the demons. They don't want to feel anything of release because they were told it was bad. They want to be relatively cured. And so starving out cancer equals undesirable people. Food mitigation diets equals a type of oncology. Okay, so there's ways you can do direct oncology through radiation and lasers and even chemotherapy, or using so many herbs and extracts and supplements and, shakes and all the things they have over there in the natural healing world. Or you can just take food away from a person progressively over time. So people cannot see the depopulation agenda because they are the depopulation agenda. Their friends and family are the depop agenda, selling their audience gluten-free, food-free lifestyle, joining in the resistance to life. They are the one side of the government controlling growth and reproduction. You can't stop it. The train left the station, so you just observe. And I observe. I guess it's better that government gives us access to food, all food, and then people choose not to buy food versus the government starving everyone out purposely. Why would you throw away the baby with the bathwater? Throw away the bathwater, keep the baby, right? You choose to starve. You chose to starve. You chose to diet. You chose. So if you think milk is poison, good, more for me. This is where I'm getting snarky, right? You can fall apart. I will not. You don't want to feel pain. The government will give you all the painkillers in the world. And you can fall apart in the meantime. I told someone one time that when they were having shoulder issues, and I said, you probably need milk because they're getting another surgery on their shoulder. I'm like, you probably need milk. He's like, what grown man drinks milk? And I'm like, oh, wow. So someone told him that grown men don't drink milk. And so when you're told that grown men don't drink milk by whoever, and then you don't drink milk, you don't eat certain foods because someone told you it was poison, because they had a deficiency, and they passed that deficiency on to you or somebody else, then that's actively starving yourself, listening to somebody else. Food has never been poison. if it's FDA approved for the intent, food has never been poisoned, but people mischaracterize symptoms and they psychologically get scared away from food. And there's a domino effect of when you bring in food that your body is deficient in, you're going to have to do other things besides just eat the food. You'll have to deal with feeling bloated. You have to deal with all these different things that people don't. And that's why skinny back in the 1960s was promoted so much, because if you're so skinny, living off of whatever medicines and things that they had at the time in a slower frequency environment, eating certain foods, you could sustain a relatively long lifestyle, cured and dynamic in the industry that you're in, and then influence the next generation of people to do the same thing. But as you know, each generation becomes weaker and weaker as it reproduces. So then the third generation, fourth generation is so weak, practicing what mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and great-grandma and grandpa did way back in the 1930s, that when they are eating gluten-free, milk-free, meat-free, eating breatharian air sandwiches, they don't survive. There goes that whole genetic line, complete annihilation, the third generation. That's what happens when people are deficient and scared away from food and listening to their friends who are projecting their deficiencies. Or you have doctors and nurses mischaracterizing symptoms and saying, hey, instead of eating food and releasing demons and all that, what does that mean? Well, releasing demons, feeling the pain and suffering and pooping out stuff, even helping yourself poop out stuff. No, they have something to recommend to you. They have something to sell you. You have to go see them in order to take away your pain and suffering. And then they lay on the love. They lay it on thick. Oh, I care about you. I want to take away your pain and suffering. But here, sign this form to make sure you don't hold me accountable if something happens to you. And, oh yeah, here, sign this form to say that you understand that there's side effects to all of this, that you might die in the process. But hey, I'll take away your pain and suffering. And so the government's not forcing me to treat anything with my pain and suffering. But if you ask to be treated so you can still gallivant everywhere, you chose. The beauty of choice is you cannot hold the government accountable when you purposely chose to starve yourself, treat your disease, and mix in with diverse company despite their warnings. I get it. Believe me, I do. You chose to take an antacid. This is what sucks. So when that post about that person dying suddenly who didn't have a you-know-what, a VACCINE, and they felt stomach pains, yeah, the climate shifted. They ate some food, wasn't poison. The climate shifted. They already had the demon within. They felt something aggressive, like their body wanted to shit out something and they probably wanted to hold it in. So instead of shitting out stuff and pulling out the crap or throwing up, what do? They take an antacid. When you take an antacid, you develop more offspring, more antibodies the body obviously can't handle. And then that person was foaming at the mouth, which is letting you know that that antacid was causing so much inflammation that the bodily fluids were coming out of the mouth. And they had, well, you can read that, and they died. Okay? Heart attack, stroke, aneurysm, brain dead. All right? You chose to take an antacid. This is what sucks. At some point, you can't treat disease anymore. You have to release the demons and eat. You chose to take all those supplements. You chose. That's the consequences of our actions. And they didn't even have a therapy to blame on. They didn't get the VACCINE. But they stuck to remedies and supplements, thinking it was better. No, it's actually worse. And there'll be more of this. There already is more of this. That's why the train left the station. How many people are out there recommending to their friends and family all the supplements and the... Many. It's already done. They built a business around it. And then they have a religion for you. Yeah, you're supposed to die someday. And here, buy all my supplements and all my different remedies. Oh yeah, and you're supposed to die someday. And here, I talk to the dead. See, there's an afterlife. You see, they've already employed so many of you to be licensed, death purveyors. And so you can't stop it. The train left the station. I seriously tried to help people. You can't stop people who are in resistance to life and energy, stuck in dogmatic principles. When I get the hives and I feel it, somebody else probably died from them. 2 days ago, I felt the demons rise up and I slept and I ate. Someone else died from them. That's the world you are in. That's what happens when you resist evolution. People die from resistance. And so there's people out there that are right now on their deathbed. Another person in my world indirectly is going through a process that... But I felt those hives come up. But that person had such a rapid growth. The opposing forces took over. And that's what goes on. When I see the hives, those are opposing forces. When I feel my arms in pain, those are opposing forces being pushed through my lymphatic system. And I have to sleep, I have to eat, I have to poop. I don't allow those opposing forces to take over and metastasize. Others are getting opposing forces carved out of them and cut off. And so you have to throw up, poop, rest when you have a stomach ache. Heartburn. I eat raw cabbage with heartburn, not medicine. I make a cabbage salad. Taking antacids develops more antibodies offspring, then obviously at some point it's died suddenly. Preventable deaths come from treating disease and disabling your release process, or eliciting somebody to go and carve it out, causing more trauma to your body. I've had only 2 cases of heartburn, and each time I either shit my brains out and had yellow bile, the caustic choleric bile come out of my ass, or I ate a salad and I pooped. I never used any natural or synthetic remedies developing more offspring. Cupid strikes again. And so I never say let food be thy medicine, ever, because that is misleading. People think cayenne pepper and garlic is the food to use as medicine. Oh my God, no. And all those different curries and spicy food and jalapenos, no. And some people have had heartburn attacks and thought it was a heart attack. I know my husband thought he had a heart attack. No, it was a heartburn attack. And I know something, he felt something a couple of days ago. He took an antacid. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I was just like, okay. And I told my husband, honey, stop taking fucking antacids. Please eat a salad or something. I've been making him cabbage. I made a cabbage Irish pie. I made cabbage. I cooked that up with some onions on top of potatoes, scalloped potatoes, and milk and cheese and venison, ground up venison. And I put cheese on top of that and a few Italian spices. It was so good. But I've been making him a lot of cabbage lately because if he's having antacid issues and heartburn issues, he needs freaking cabbage. Cabbage. No, he survived a potential diet suddenly. And that was back in 2020. Okay, he thought he fainted. He thought he had a heart. No, it was a heartburn attack. Because the climate changed so aggressively. He went to the hospital. They didn't find any cardiac enzymes. He couldn't figure out what the hell was going on, but he was definitely down for the count for a few days. Even had to miss a wedding that I went stag to. And so I look back on that and I'm like, oh, wow. He narrowly averted a died suddenly situation. So that's why I'm just like, oh my God. Anyone recommending my husband antacids? Anyone recommending my husband anything when he feels whatever? Don't be a party to anyone's potential died suddenly or death. Don't even recommend shit to your friends. So when the climate changes aggressively, heartburn will come up for people. And people won't survive it because they keep treating their fucking diseases. And now their friends and family are suffering, watching people die from preventable deaths. And yeah, I'm swearing because I feel this woman's pain. It was a post that she posted. What if it happened to my husband? Well, it did, but he didn't die from it. What if it happens to your friends and family and husbands and wives as you're shoving antacids down their throat? No. So now you know your recommendations of remedies could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So there. I don't want to hear any more how it's the government's fault of why people are dying suddenly. Over time, it's all of your remedies is what caused the overabundance of antibodies, conditioning people to run away from pain and disease. Blood on your hands. I repented. Remember, I was promoting colloidal silver and garlic oil, and everyone was putting out all their different remedies in the group that I had. I repented and changed my viewpoints. I told you guys it was the remedies that would be the killer to your friends and family. I guess you'll find out and get the proof where I'm coming from. If you're looking for proof, don't worry, you'll see the proof. It'll be too late. And I know people can't handle pain and suffering, so it's a fucked up position to be in. But you'll have someone to blame or something to blame, like McCarthyism. Like the right was blaming the left and was playing that witch hunt. No different than what's going on now. People are dying suddenly and they're blaming everything under the sun. But they're not even looking at what they're recommending to their friends and family, that they're running away from pain and suffering, that they're starving themselves, saying food is poison. But I will not be a party to somebody else's death through my good intentions and love, and resistance. I'm not promoting cannabis to people. I'm not saying cannabis is the end-all, be-all, but there are people out there that do, and then when people die suddenly because they are overabundant in the antibodies and starvation of holding and smoking so much cannabis, and they're falling apart, getting heart attacks and strokes, and saying that Jillian is dangerous, when you're actively promoting drugs to people to run away from pain and suffering, I don't want to fucking hear it. We have no business in other people's health issues. I learned my lesson. Because not only will you get blamed for it, but you can actually contribute to it. And antibodies and antibiotics is a contribution. Antacids are a contribution. Cayenne pepper and prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, is a contribution to die suddenly. They turned your friends and families into angels of death. Who's they? The system. That's why I walked away from the health and wellness world, because there will be a tipping point. There is. We're in it right now. That's why I scaled down my whole lifestyle. I can't bear to watch. And you never know when the body is overridden with antibodies. It cannot release because of so many factors. So I stay out of people's health world, and I don't recommend them anything, not even the J juice. And so what do you think disease X is? Your reactions to pain and suffering will be died suddenly at some point. They've conditioned you to run away from pain and suffering and to remedy it away, and of course, be on all of your diets. In this environment, even an antacid can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Your spicy herbal concoction can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That alcohol can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Your cannabis and speed 'em up supplements can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And of course, alcohol, like I said. Over-the-counter drugs, natural remedies, are like steroids during climate change. They can be just as deadly, if not deadlier, than prescription drugs, because people are under the impression natural remedies are safer. So they overdo them. Abuse natural remedies, even doing so much J juice, causing constipation and lack of release and loss of appetite. It's out of your hands, because you know when the climate changes so aggressively, people feel symptoms. What is their natural reaction? To stop the pain and symptoms, and it turns into a died suddenly. That's disease X. You can't blame the system because they kept telling you. You kept resisting. And you can't legislate morals. You can't tell people they have to have pain and suffering in their life, so people will be on the string of remedies until the last straw that breaks the camel's back. That's disease X. That's the variable, and you can put in whatever you want to represent X. Air, food, and water. And then you can break down what the air is, what the food is, and what the water is. Okay? Sometimes it's food that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's all relative to your immune system and the food allergies and anything else. It's too late. But at least you know, and you can also deny my information and live in your fantasy world. That's the beauty of choice. If my information is too painful, you can believe in rainbows and sunshine and be all about love, and go to heaven. And so that is why people thought food, air, and water and drugs were poison, because some people were at their limit of antibody accumulation. They either triggered cancer, disease, and chronic illness, or died suddenly. And that is the walking dead, as people divide up into their factions of resistance against the enemy they hold inside their own body. Food, air, and water therapy allergies means you are over capacity. That's why you have all the side effects. Those side effects in any drug or any kind of protocol tells you the body's over capacity and it has to release. And can you handle the release process? Will you survive it? And you refuse to release the demons the proper way, which is why you have vegan and vegetarians and aging population intolerant to food, air, and water. And so if you want to survive this, convert your hard-earned money into food, shelter, water, and climate control. And this is for April 8th. I would never tell anyone to stock up on their medicine, because that could be the death of them. But then that is a catch-22. If they don't take their meds, it is the death of them. So you're kind of screwed with them. And so, I'm not going to say it. April 8th, it's whatever. You can warn people till you're blue in the face. It's not going to make a difference. They're pretty much, people are feeling good until they don't. People feel good until they don't. And when they don't feel good, that's the moment of truth. How will they respond to not feeling good? And when they take that remedy, when they do that surgery, when they eat that food on a deficient body, and they've already laid the groundwork for it died suddenly, it's not going to matter. You can warn them till you're blue in the face. You can warn people, don't be out there on April 8th. And some have to work. Maybe they don't, I don't know, we'll see. Is it too late to save yourself? Okay, so this is the thing that's really important. So understand my world. I've been conditioned to be on my own, staying home, staying safe, eating food, feeling bloated, shitting my brains out, feeling depressed. I wasn't like everybody else. Is it too late to save yourself? I was thinking about 9/11, 2001, and how young I was, still wet behind the ears, full of hope for the future, despite what happened to the World Trade Center. I remember how much reading, writing, and experiencing, emoting, eating, getting sick, traveling, and rebelling I was doing to strive to the next level, and in the meantime, expand my capacity. I was not one of the lucky ones who had a bulletproof immune system, allowing relative energetic equilibrium, and if the equilibrium was off, manage the dips or highs with drugs or other mediators. I was one of those who triggered extreme hormonal dips and extreme highs, causing such chaos, but managed to get so much done while high on my hormones, and then crawl into my hole of my apartment or room, riding out the lows. During that time, I would eat so much food like spaghetti, watch so many movies, and sleep and sleep and sleep, and then later on poop so much and finally get on the normal routine I had to live on so I could make just enough money to cover my bills, since calling in sick was frowned upon. And I lost money calling in sick. And after all the sick days were used up, I lost money after calling in sick, after all the sick days were used up. Once I left my apartment after sleeping, eating, feeling guilty, I took time off to save myself. I would go into work and find a way to explain my absence. And of course, if you're not diagnosed with an acceptable condition, bosses start making notes on absences and lame excuses and other idiosyncrasies. And then one day it's time to leave. See, people don't understand. They just didn't understand back then. I mean, should I be mad at them? No, but I still have that trauma from it, so whatever. Okay, so then if I was asked to leave per se, as it was not working out, I would file unemployment, go through that process, sit for a minute until I found another job, perform an excellent interview, beating out other candidates. Oh, I was a great interviewer. Oh my God. Okay. And in the temporary agency, and then start all over again and again and again and again. That's why I'm so good at reading people. I've been around so many different workplaces, so many different industries, so many different countries, in different lifestyles and belief systems, in different office environments, and playing those games with the different people. It was all the same. In all these corporate America, it's the same type of people. High school people, cliquey bitches, and cliquey men, and people who think that their shit doesn't stink and will wield their power over you and all that stuff. And then, then you have to play those games. And I'm tired of playing, okay, here's the queen bee. You got to kiss her ass. And all the politics around corporate America. It was like high school. It was like junior high. Oh, you don't act like, you don't look like, you don't be like, oh, you're new. Then the hazing rituals, the freezing you out, the playing those games. Oh, these two are really, like that, and you're just whatever. Oh God, it was fucking hell working in corporate America. So it was like Groundhog Day for more than 10 years, job to job, class to class, different town, city, different roommates. And it was about working for myself in the insurance industry, capitalizing on 2 weeks I kicked ass in the sales. That's why I had to work for myself. And I was able to crawl and go downhill for the next 2 weeks until it was time to be sick again and crawl into my hole and leave the world for a week or a few days. I can attest during those down days, it was a time I was gaining my life back and replenishing the resources I used up during those 2 weeks of frenetic energy of so much coffee, dieting, and living on adrenaline until the tank became empty and then down to refill the tank. Okay, so that's what's going on. When there's so much aggression out there in the environment and you feel it because you see the hives or other things happen, you're using so many resources, even when you don't know it. Like when your heart's beating fast and you're feeling the pain in your arms and shoulders. Yeah, you have to feed disease. You have to feed disease because it's using energy that needs to be replaced, and you have to release the demons. You can't be corked up, because when you're corked up, guess what happens? You get growths. Then you have to go under trauma called surgery. That's what happens. Obviously, our society is not built on that type of roller coaster living. Obviously, anyone who exhibits such characteristics gets called lazy, mentally ill, and stupid. The crowd of family and friends wanted me to be a drug addict. Literally, they wanted me to get on some kind of drug here to even you out. Here, get on this drug, get on that. Don't eat this food. That food's poison, right? So the system of family and friends wanted me to spend myself out of existence in even corporate America. Okay, they wanted me to be a drug addict, dieting, and consistent like everyone else. I did seek help for that condition and was prescribed Prozac, food mitigation diets. And through that stress, I took on smoking cigarettes during the most stressful times of my life. I said no to the Prozac. I still drank coffee and ate the food and was on and off cigarettes for many years. And then I left California to get married and try my luck with a stranger in a different land. You see, there's no way I could keep up with people in California, because you had to either be like a man and build like a brick shithouse and be strong and be consistent, or you'd be some hot wife married to those men, or be one of those people that are on drugs in order to go to work. And it could be prescription drugs, it could be illicit drugs, not illicit so much because they're drug testing, but you'd have to be on some kind of prescription drug in order to go to work. And so I said, fuck this. So when I was eating so much spaghetti 20 years ago during my bouts of sickness in my hole of my room or apartment, then feeling bloated and ugly and then pooping it out later, it is exactly what I have been feeling the last 3 years. Each time I experienced those symptoms, I actually shat away, sweat, and seeped away all the potential cancer, disease, and chronic illness that could turn into either a died suddenly or an excessive condition, which is why I had a PMDD of chronic condition that was not deadly, but if not understood, could psychologically deteriorate someone, which it did a little bit for me, and or cause them to disfigure themselves by asking a doctor to surgically take out my uterus, which almost happened right before the Jilly Juice world. When I went into that one company over here in North Canton, I told the HR person, I know I have PMDD. I was kicking ass, but then I felt myself deteriorate again. And I was taking the kombuchas, drinking so many of those. Oh my God. And I even crumbled the top part of my tooth because of that. There's so much aggressive sugar with that. And I wasn't offsetting with other minerals. I was telling the HR lady, maybe when I get the health insurance, I'll just get my uterus taken out. Because I'm so tired of this PMS. I want to be so amazing and so successful and making so much money for my husband that I was willing to disfigure myself for my husband, for that job. And that's what women are faced with. To compete and to be like everyone else, they have to not only be a drug addict, but also disfigure themselves. That's how messed up our society is. And when you say no to that, and you have to leave a situation because you have to take care of yourself, then on top of that, then you're getting called all these different names and told that you're lazy. And say, oh, you don't want to work. You retired because... And so saving yourself is not looked upon as anything nice, because in the system out there, in the world out there, saving oneself means to become an alcoholic and a drug addict and disfiguring themselves. That's how you save yourself in mainstream. And people do, and then guess what? They're dying suddenly, or they're suffering astronomically, because the body can't handle any more disfigurement. They can't handle any more drugs and alcohol. And so fast forward to 2020 and the great pandemic of 2019, every single symptom I experienced at some point during my down days was not only came up, but all the habits I practiced for over 10 years of battling hormonal imbalances saved my life. And I developed the freedom to stay home, not try to keep up with everyone out there who frowns upon my ways of self-preservation. And I have the latitude to make observations and explain myself. I finally was able to purge out what could have been more aggressive, deadly cancers. Remember, I had that lipoma on my vulva. And I remember moving it around many times. I'm like, what the hell is this? I just thought it was part of, but no, it was because I had a rash a long time ago. right in my lymphatic system, right in the inguinal, right, that little crevice on the side of your thigh and the apex. And then they put creams on it to push that inflammation back in the body, and it probably turned into a lipoma. It turned into a thing that could turn into cancer. But my body was seeping things out down there the last couple of years. And so my lymphatic system is open, so I don't have some kind of fast-moving cancer. Okay? And so I was finally able to purge out what could have been more aggressive, deadly cancers, diseases, and chronic illnesses, and even forego the aging process. So as long as I had food, rest, and release, and a safe place to do that. My husband and myself built a safe place for him to have fun and do what he does, so I could stay home and stay safe and lay my head down and sleep when I need to and eat when I need to. I don't spend money out of existence. I don't put him in the poorhouse. I let him determine what is appropriate for his world, and he has a good head on his shoulders. And, I've developed a nice situation for myself so I can survive this. My habits of saving myself is what is saving me right now during climate change, while other people are treating their diseases, gallivanting all over the globe, not even realizing the microbes in diverse company are highly activated and or dying suddenly. I have no issue with any food, sleep, or release, and I know when to rest when the environment is even more aggressive. And some people like my husband are like my husband. But see, my husband, some people have been diagnosed with conditions. Some people are just doing stuff and then they won't know anything until one day they just collapse. See, I fall asleep so quickly and sleep mostly soundly. And if I'm not trying to release recently acquired foreign microbes, I feel stronger, smarter, clear-headed, and very aware of major indicators of deadly climate change. Okay, so I fall asleep so quickly and sleep mostly soundly if I'm not trying to release recently acquired foreign microbes. And I do feel stronger, smarter, clear-headed, and very aware of major indicators of deadly climate change. I know we're all trying to survive with the tools we have at the time. And I also know I come off snarky, holier than thou, and even a little judgy. And so part of me still feels the sting of judgment in my past, and parts of me enjoy giving it back. And then other parts of me are like trying to release the demons of trauma, which as I watch others deteriorate from what I saved myself from, staying home and eating, resting, and watching movies and feeling the pain of whatever. Okay? And so, oh, Jesus Christ, so much. The West has more choices than most people. I'm just one of many representing the survival techniques that may or may not work for you. I represent not only to give hope to those who are similar to me, but also look back at the last 30 years of my life and realize my habits back then is what is saving me today. Okay, that right there is amazing to me. Is it too late to save yourself? Only you know. And so I felt what COVID people felt like in smaller circumstances the last 30 years. I remember going back when I worked for Macy's, and I called in sick that one time, and I came back after a day or so, and I came back kind of hunched over, like my back was just hunched over, and my boss was like, God, it's like you came back with the flu or came back from the flu or something. You're like all hunched over and all. I'm like, yeah, that's what I feel like when I feel this stuff, and I'm like, my back is hurting and arms are hurting and things are hurting and you feel hunched over. That's like long COVID. I had COVID back then. It wasn't called COVID. It was like a PMDD because it happened. It was triggered around the time of my menses. And so I felt what COVID people felt like in smaller circumstances the last 30 years. I had all types of symptoms that people with diagnosable conditions had the last 30 years. And I took the time to release the demons. That's why I'm surviving without a diagnosable condition and without getting treated. I released most of the demons during the time I had to when I had to call in sick. When I said no to prescription drugs, even when I stopped taking over-the-counter drugs. When I was in the holistic world, I think I messed up my system. But I had room to mess up because I did not royally mess up myself years before. And it was still brutal reconciling everything. So when I was taking all those supplements and detoxes and diatomaceous earth and borax, back in 2012, and then doing all those supplements from the natural store, taking all the, what is it, now, or all these other supplements and oils and all this other crap. Oh, I know I developed so many monsters. Absolutely. So I had to release those demons. All right. And so, yeah, just so you know, people say, oh, Jillian's been traumatized. They're trying to feel sorry for me and shit, or feel sorry for anyone that's been traumatized or whatever. And they're like, we have people who are like alcoholics and drug addicts and dying and reproducing and big families and all that shit. And they're like, oh, look, that's an over-traumatized person. Let's feel sorry for them. And they're like, oh yeah, over-traumatized people. Here are the signs of an over-traumatized person: when they explain themselves, when they're always saying sorry. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. So I said, you know what? So when I said the over-traumatized explain themselves, or they are activists, drug addicts, alcoholics, sex addicts, or go into mental health professions, or have large families, I get right back to whoever said that. I don't know who's behind some of these sites out there that say this shit. Heavily into religion and politics and science to absorb their trauma. Of course, addicted to love and beauty and fantasies, and probably have many pets, very sociable, probably even funny with a dark wit about them, or constantly looking for distractions and adrenaline seekers. The ones who can explain themselves or over-explain themselves are probably lucid and not drug addicts and alcoholics. Trauma doesn't always manifest into words and explanations. People put on a good front to distract away from their projections, diagnosing others. And that's pretty much 99.999% of society. So we have these sites that are like, putting out statements, and who knows who's behind these sites. And I'm just like, I'm like, give it right back to them. And so people say that trauma weakens you and it messes with your gut and does this and does that. Trauma doesn't make you stronger. And I'll say, yeah, okay, true. Trauma doesn't make you stronger. But if you react to trauma with more trauma, then this observation doesn't mean anything. You're stating the obvious. Well, obviously trauma weakens you, but your reaction to trauma is what will weaken you even more. So yeah, someone breaks up with you. Oh gosh, now you got to go on an alcohol binge. You go on a bender. See, when people people have issues that go on that they're out of their control. You know what happened when someone broke up with me a while back ago in San Francisco? Instead of me going on a bender and drink myself away or do whatever, I just cried and cried and cried. And then I went off to Hawaii and had fun out there. I won't say a bender of sorts. I guess you could call it that. But I was around relatively okay people at the time. And I came back to California after getting through all that and was like, okay, time to move on. But it took me about 6 or 7 months to get over that breakup. And I didn't just totally destroy myself after that. But that's the thing, is that you really don't want to react to trauma with more trauma, because it will weaken you. Okay, so trauma only makes you stronger when you realize what you have to do to make yourself stronger despite it, and only survive it, but don't keep re-traumatizing yourself using the latest forms of therapies. That's the issue with trauma. People keep re-traumatizing themselves, expecting a different result. What is insanity? Doing the same thing over again in different ways, expecting a different result. If your whole point is to run away from pain because of some trauma that was out of your hands, and then you keep doing self-harm through FDA-approved protocols and surgeries, and then you keep running away from pain, that's called insanity. And that's another voluntary trauma further weakening you. And people keep weakening themselves because of that. Many people underestimate the power of food. That's why their digestive system is crap. They don't eat their vegetables. They don't eat their meat. They don't drink milk or dairy products. And they think most food is poisoned. And so they're in a state of hypervigilance because they're starving and hosting a demon within called opposing forces. And they keep traumatizing themselves, holding on to the trauma. They never let it go. Okay? And so, as far as okay. So crickets and insects give you a very extraordinary amount of calcium that Vicky figured out. And I remember even watching The Mummy, and when the mummy, the ghost, turned into a bunch of insects, that should tell you that maybe those insects are actual little forms of calcium and fatty acid and amino acid. And so Vicky figured out that her bird was losing feathers, and it looks like it was the calcium that she was missing. So she grounded cuttlefish, lots of it, and added calcium drops to water and formula. And so there's a lot of calcium in bugs. Bugs she eats are very high in calcium. Okay? And so when we have these plant-based people who are like, oh, we can't eat bugs, and of course they're not eating meat, so what are they eating? Plants. And they're weakening themselves, starving. And so when I eat meat like venison, it converts to your organs. Okay, it's called energy conversion. You're not going to turn into a pig. You're not going to turn into a horse. You're not going to turn into a cow, because you have a blueprint, a spirit about you, that when you eat pig and fish and cow and crickets and other types of insects, you will convert that into a food resource that will then reinforce your vital organs. But people who are vegan and vegetarian have missed the point. They have politicized food, emotional about food, don't understand the science behind food and energy conversion. They bought into all the taglines from Tavistock in the health and wellness world, in the holistic world, regurgitated by the naturopathics who have something to sell you. Another diet, another detox, another supplement, another whatever, another voodoo shit. And they're selling you yoga regimes and selling you workout things so you can look like some chick on Facebook who's all hair, skin, and nails, and that's it. And then you die suddenly because you have so much resistance. You see what happens when those who work out so much, they're basically super inflating themselves, depleting themselves of hormones. Eventually, when those hormones get depleted and those big bulgy muscles turn into just sagging skin because they've depleted their resources, yeah, they were one of those temporary people that had to look hot for a minute, politicize food, call people who eat meat cannibals, and of course they're highly sexual, looking for the girl to go and do, or looking for the guy to go and do. And they also have a string of supplements, a string of diets, a string of, oh gosh, food is poison, a string of activist stances. And of course they're all about, oh, you're supposed to die someday. You'll go off and ascend to heaven. So yeah, it all works together. That's Tavistock. That's fucking phenomenal. How they have strung together all those different thought processes until you get the perfect storm. You get a vegan vegetarian in a specific religion, all about ascension, going off to heaven and hell and wherever, selling you death and dying and reproduction and sexuality, and of course all the diets, all the supplements that cause more offspring, more competition. And then when you die suddenly and you feel all these symptoms, then it's all these, different ascension feelings, okay. And when you die, okay, that's your gift. Remember, your body's just a vessel. Your spirit lives forever. And then people are okay with dying. Oh, it's a trip watching some of these influencers. Oh my gosh. So I just, yeah. Yeah, okay. That's all I'm going to say right now. Well, I don't know. What else do I have to say? My husband's still sleeping. That's why I'm kind of talking a little bit like low. Okay, so record ocean temperatures could lead to explosive hurricane season. You're still living in Florida? You're still living on the coastline? The writing's on the wall, people. Hello, McFly. Come on. And then there's, oh yeah. Talk about venison. I had some coffee yesterday. Okay. There's going to be vertical urban farming. Okay, they're trying to eradicate people just destroying the earth through huge ag farming. So it'll be vertical farming. Lab created meat, milk, and cheese. Okay. McCarthyism is like another witch hunt that was back in the 1950s. It's no different than today. Immune system activation. And what else? Oh, yeah. All right, that's all I'm going to say. I think I read most of the things. The rapture most likely is April 8th or thereafter. The tornadoes that came through, there was 111 warnings, and there was 577 severe T-storm warnings, and there's like a bunch of tornadoes over here in Ohio. And and then all the chemtrails is like making a huge screen, smoke screen. So that would create then like a movie theater. Who knows what they're going to post or project. And so, yeah, Mountain Dew. All right. Okay, I'm just going down to see if I left anything off. Okay. I think I did pretty well. All right. Limbo, yeah. All right. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying stuff. Tomorrow I might read. No. I mean, yeah, I mean, what else can you say to people? Remember, people are so intolerant to feeling pain and suffering, and they're in their life, they're stuck in their lifestyle, stuck in their belief system. So what do I do this for? Because the whole thing with the foreign objects, and then that whole thing with the hip replacement, and people are going like, oh my God, people having their hips are rejecting right after they got the you-know-what. And I'm like, it's not just the you-know-what. It's also immune system activation through the high frequencies, through climate change. And so then I'm like, that's why the J juice could potentially purge out foreign objects. Remember that lady, that girl Beth, a long time ago. She was saying that she was in an accident and she had glass in her face and she did the J juice and the glass started coming out of her face. I activated her immune system. And she was saying that glass was coming out of her face, doing the reverse. The body was pushing out the glass out of her face. And so, yeah, the J juice had that ability back then. And then you took so much of it, you cure yourself so you can actually overdo it. But then I'm realizing, oh shit, so the J juice is so ionic with nutrients that people needed. And then you're in an ionic environment such as this, and people are finding their implants and transplants are being purged or immune system shut down because the body couldn't handle the release process. Now you get it. Now you understood why the system came down on me so hard, because they had everyone in relative equilibrium, and I just started a war that probably needed to happen because it was going to happen anyways. And then we had 7 years to pick that apart. So that way when this situation of the pandemic and COVID-19 and climate change happened, we had laid the groundwork to understand that, yeah, now you can't resist pain and suffering. I mean, you can, but it'll be a die suddenly. You can't be afraid of food, air, and water. You can't be intolerant to food, air, and water. And yeah. And so, but again, everyone makes their choices. But I'm glad I was able to finally wrap up that loose end about foreign objects. Because then the other side of it is you had to have food to replace and be, the food was the back end rebuilding while the front end was purging out and releasing the demons of the past, present, and even the future. And those have to happen simultaneously. That's why they're not going to completely annihilate the world with nuclear war. They figured out how to do it. Now you just have to survive it. And if you're one of those who are intolerant to air, food, and water, and your kids are gluten-free, fat-free, milk-free, meat-free, starving, in and out of the hospital, the environment will be so aggressive, it might be questionable. Those who are so resistant to change, so intolerant, drug addicted, alcohol addicted, deficient, malnourished. Yeah. The system is environmentally, surgically oncologizing the world. which is why Africa will be sustainable. They'll have their own stuff, but the West will be in for a day of reckoning. There will be a rapture. Will it be on April 8th? All signs point to yes. How will it come out? I have no idea. So that's why I just stay home if you can. All right, bye.